This issue is titled What Happened to Kitty, and it deals with the fallout of Kitty Pryde's supposed death from the previous issue. Surprise! She's not actually dead. Instead, Kitty's been kidnapped by those pesky Morlocks and is being forced to wed one of their own, the mutant tracker Caliban. The story takes place mostly in the underground sewers of the Alley, aka the Morlocks' home, giving it that rank, eerie feeling of something totally morbid going down. It's a really enjoyable romp in the sludge and slime, even though it focuses more on interpersonal dynamics than explicit action. It does a good job of exploring the differences and similarities between the two very distinct groups, the X-Men and the Morlocks. We see instances of how the sewer-dwelling Morlocks sometimes out-virtue the surface-walking X-Men, even though they're supposed to be the villains. And with it all, we still do get a few fun moments of mutants doing mutant things. I actually expected there to be more of a whodunit throughline explored here, given that the previous issue ended on such a grave image of Kitty splattered on the ground, but I'm happy that it didn't waste time with that. The mystery of Kitty's death is resolved in the first few panels, after dead Kitty's scent is a dead giveaway to Wolverine that it's not actually her. The team proceeds to hunt for the real Kitty right away, and I really like that. It keeps the storytelling active and the tensions high. Jumping right into it was a wise decision, because as the issue goes along, there really isn't a lot of actual action happening, so dragging out a whole whodunit story in the beginning would have just made this issue lag. But as it stands, I can feel the momentum of the story moving along the entire time, so the correct call was definitely made. This was a great issue to read overall. Here are some of the highlights for me.
Cover art.
Talk about a creepy image. This is literally something I would expect to see on Tales from the Crypt, or Tales from the Crypt Keeper, depending on your generation. It's spooky and unsettling, but the most important thing about it, to me at least, is that it's relevant. The art tells me something about the story inside. Kitty very reluctantly participating in a wedding with Caliban. Even if I don't know who Caliban is at this point, the cover artist kindly gives enough hints in the image so I can help deduce what's happening here. Not only is it a wedding, but the religious text indicates that it's Morlock law, so at least I know that Kitty's marrying a Morlock, if I don't know exactly which one. Going into this issue, I feel like I can get a sense of what the plot is about, and it excites me. Cover art is something I gripe about with contemporary comics. I find the art doesn't always inform me what's going to happen in the issue, and sometimes the connection is so far from the actual content that I dare say it's downright misleading. Call me crazy for wanting to judge a comic book by its cover. There are lots of comics I didn't buy for a long time because the cover looked too boring to me. In some cases, I was right to hold out for so long, but other times, my hubris was totally upended. I guess what I'm saying is that I wish the cover art today would try to be a little bit more relevant to the story it's advertising, much like this issue was. And if the story's boring, then yeah, feel free to have a boring cover too.
Kitty Pryde.
The big event of this issue is obviously the wedding between Kitty and Caliban. It harkens back to a previous one where Kitty made Caliban a promise that she would stay with him forever if he helped her find the X-Men. I don't think Kitty explicitly meant that she would marry him, but I also think that she would have said anything to save her friends. Not that I can blame her, I would have said the same thing, and probably more. There's a stunning setup of Kitty in a delusional state as she marches in her fantasy wedding. She's in a gorgeous wedding gown with a supposedly handsome prince waiting for her, but everything is shattered as soon as she sees the wretched face of her groom-to-be is actually Caliban. The whole thing is totally reminiscent of the drugged masquerade scene from Labyrinth, and Kitty gives off the same eerie complacency that Sarah did. Kitty snaps back to reality, and the contrasting environment is shocking compared to her fantasy land. Instead of esteemed guests dressed to the nines, she's surrounded by ruffians roughing it in rags. The truth is way less glamorous to behold, but I dare say that it's sort of beautiful in its own grotesque way. Like 'em or not, the Morlocks are a people, and to become one of them is to be accepted by an entire group. These people have only faced rejection their entire lives, so acceptance by them is no small feat. Kitty has no idea what that's like. She's mutant, but she passes as human. She can walk in the world above without immediate persecution. By wedding Caliban, Kitty will not only be married to him, but also to the Morlocks as a whole. She, a surface dweller, Someone who represents everything that Morlocks hate and everyone who hates Morlocks will be welcomed into the fold, no questions asked. That's a pretty big give on a distrusting Morlock's part. Yeah, the whole Morlock scene is a bit culty, but given that this fiercely protected sense of community is what has helped the Morlocks survive all this time in the sewers, it's kind of heartwarming that they'd allow Kitty to experience that too. There's a bit of a will they, won't they throughout the story to keep the intrigue. It's very like Kitty to both keep and not keep her word. She's a reactive character by nature. She is not good at regulating her emotions, and her heart is pretty much on her sleeve all the time. When she realizes the gravity of the situation she's in, she totally spazzes and her filter comes off. She's extremely rude to Caliban, which who can blame her given the kidnapping, but to me it's also a sign of her age and maturity level. It reminds me of when Lisa Simpson broke Ralph Wiggins' heart after he professed his love for her. I feel like we can see Caliban's heartbreak a little bit in this scene too. I don't think Kitty means to be so hurtful, she just has no filter and is in a very intense situation. Kitty's code of conduct is heavy in the honor and duty department. She is not going to betray someone if she can help it, especially not someone who has done her a favor in the past. And whether we do want to call it duty, or even if it's simply pity that she feels for Caliban, it's commendable that someone who is not even yet 15 would agree to live out the rest of her life in the gross New York City sewer system just because she said she would. She figures she can live down here with a man who honestly loves her, but she wouldn't be able to live up there with a tainted conscience. In the end, she's shooed off by Caliban himself after he understands that her heart's not in it. But throughout the hoopla, Kitty being married to Caliban actually feels like it might really happen. I mean, yeah, the whole arrangement starts off totally against her will and everything, but Callisto says it best when she acknowledges the emotional trauma Kitty is going through to become one of them, that it's deserving of the Morlock's respect. They don't have to like Kitty, but she'll soon be one of them, so they'll grant her the same camaraderie they'd grant any other Morlock and treat her one and the same.
Callisto.
I want to say that there's no clear villain in this story, but that's not really true. Callisto is obviously the main antagonist. She is a capable woman, and she has planned this entire thing down to a T. The reason why I'm wishy-washy on classifying her as a villain is because everything she's doing, on a surface level at least, is backed by reason. Kitty owes Caliban the very promise that Callisto is collecting for him. She's just acting as Repo Woman. It's no duh that Callisto has ulterior motives. She knows that Kitty disappearing will crush Storm's spirit, and that's most likely her actual intent here. But if we're looking at it from a contractual standpoint, then yeah, time for Kitty to pay up. But Callisto isn't really the altruistic type. She's calculated. Part of me wonders if the wedding was all an entire charade just to lure the X-Men there, just so Callisto could exact some revenge. Was it all so she could challenge Storm again and reclaim her formal leadership role of the Morlocks? Callisto doesn't seem surprised in the slightest when Storm and the team show up. She's ready to fight and is even able to predict Storm's first move. It's not their first tussle after all. But if that's what she really wanted, then why go through so much trouble to throw off the X-Men with the fake dead Kitty? It's counterproductive to Callisto's revenge. That's why I abstained from making Callisto a total villain in this one. Maybe her intent really was purely and generously for Caliban. She's sort of like the matriarch of the entire Morlock community, so maybe she really did just want to see her son happy. That said, she's not the nicest mother to Caliban. She certainly revels in the pain Kitty's hurtful words cause him. But I think Morlocks see pain as a form of strength or power, so even though it seems cruel to us, maybe she sees it as a learning experience for Caliban. Like tough love, which is probably the only kind of love Morlocks have ever known. There's a whole awkward exchange between Kitty and Caliban that actually deepens Callisto's hooks into Kitty. Kitty's sensitive, if aloof at times, and hurting Caliban's feelings is the last thing she'd want to do. It chips away at Kitty's resolve when she realizes just how rude she's been, and that gives Callisto the in she needs to guilt Kitty even further into the plot. I think what's most interesting about Callisto in this story is the manner in which she manipulates the heroes. She knows how their minds work. She knows their virtue, and even though it isn't something she shares, she's smart enough to know how to exploit it for her own means. That's what I mean when I say Callisto is smart. Her treachery in this issue is largely based in mind games. She's not out here slinging slurs and threats. She's manipulating the situation to have the heroes doubt their own heroic selves, and that's what's genius in Callisto's plan. A hero can take out a villain no problem, but a situation becomes murky once a hero has to take out themselves. If there's anything a Morlock knows more than how words can hurt, it's that they matter, and Callisto knows that Kitty Pryde won't break hers. But it also must be said that Callisto's not totally heartless, although if Storm had her way, she would have been by now. When she believes that Kitty will follow through on the promise to become a Morlock, she earnestly accepts Kitty into the fold and agrees to help save Colossus's life. She's not kidding when she says that Morlocks look out for other Morlocks. Surface Dweller, X-Man, whatever. The past is wiped clean once you join the Morlock ranks and become one of them. Even after Kitty forces Storm to call off the rescue mission, Callisto still honors her word to help Colossus. She holds the pedigree of what it means to be a Morlock above all else. Say what you will about the word and virtue of heroes, I dare say the pact is even stronger between Morlocks.
Caliban.
This issue harkens back to a previous one where Kitty made Caliban a promise that she would stay with him forever if he helped her find the X-Men. Kitty of course had no intention to keep that promise, but would have literally said anything to save her friends. Can't blame her much there. To someone like Caliban though, whose view of life is extremely narrow and based fully in the distrust of others, a promise like that means everything. Caliban doesn't think he's doing anything wrong in this issue. He's an extremely naive and pathetic character. Sweet in his way, but pathetic. The promise he seeks Kitty to fulfill has been contorted by Callisto to serve her own revenge, but it's a promise that he still wants Kitty to keep. If I consider that Kitty behaves like an immature teenager, then Caliban behaves like a child. He's not spoiled or bratty, he's just super sheltered and unknowing of things, so he doesn't have a very broad outlook of the world. When Kitty promised that she would be with him forever, he interpreted that as her devoting herself to him. She's his, and by right they should be wed. It's not with malicious intent that he considers this, it's just how he understands the world. Down in the alley, I can only imagine what possession means. If something belongs to one Morlock, does it belong to all of them? Or is individual possession a fierce thing to be protected? I don't know, but either way, Caliban wants Kitty and Callisto is more than happy to deliver. Bless Caliban at the end of this issue for releasing Kitty from her promise, for doing a favor to someone who lives in a world where no one did any favors to him. I can't believe that he would ever willingly subject Kitty, whom he admires, to any pain or grief. It just took some time for him to make up his own mind without Callisto intervening. He's not a bad guy, and it's evident in the disappointment he feels after letting Kitty go. He didn't mean to be doing anything bad this entire time. He was just cashing in on a promise that Kitty willingly made. Naivete really does straddle good and evil. People are sort of middle ground until they wisen up and make decisive decisions based on what they've learned. Depending on which way they go, that's how you can tell a person's true character. In Caliban's case, he does the right thing even though it causes him heartache. It takes Kitty being an extremely pouty soon-to-be wife for him to finally clue in. She has resigned to her fate, but certainly won't be happy about it. Maybe Caliban foresees what life would be like living with someone like that. Sounds like a bummer of a marriage, Cal. So to her eternal gratitude, he lets her go, hoping she'll one day return to him out of her own free will. It's just another loss in a Morlock's life who already has nothing. His act is the honest embodiment of if you love something, let it free, and hopefully someday it'll return to thee.
Storm.
Storm is now in her tough-as-nails phase, but it doesn't mean she's unfeeling. I actually contest that she feels things deeper during this stage of her life. As much as she is a complex force of nature, her emotions often reign control over her when they're at their peak, and sometimes, like in this issue, they make it rain literally. Weather patterns are intrinsically tied to Storm's emotions, and the turmoil in the skies is an indication of the turmoil and rage she feels inside, even if her stone-cold front refuses to show it. Her natural manifestations are a really great storytelling technique to inform us of Storm's inner dialogue without having her explicitly tell us. Now, I know it was just a way to get the plot moving, but I did think it was a clever bit of storytelling the way Storm deduced who took Kitty. She's smart to assume that the perpetrator wouldn't be sloppy. The details on Kitty's fake corpse were too fine. Whomever did it used their entire knowledge of the X-Men to set the trap and cover their tails. That knowledge did not include Wolverine, nor his heightened senses. Not many of the X-Men's enemies don't know who Wolverine is, but he was in Japan while the X-Men rescued Angel from the Morlocks a few issues ago, and so it's not too far a stretch for Storm to put it all together. She knows of Masque's transmutational abilities, the corpse obviously being his handiwork, and is probably definitely aware that Callisto would be looking for revenge. Sure, it's a bit of a conceit accepting that the Morlocks would be Storm's first and correct guess, but the clues used to get there are unique ones, and I think it was a great way to get the story going. Storm is certainly an X-Leader with the brain. I also like how Storm is unleashed when the team does find Kitty. She holds nothing back and attacks immediately. Storm and Callisto's feud is a passionate one, and the more Storm gives into that pure hatred she feels for Callisto, the sloppier and thus more dangerous she can get. Callisto thrives on seeing the disgust she causes Storm. It's almost like it gives Callisto an adrenaline boost. I think that if Storm isn't careful, it'll be that very hatred that'll someday give Callisto the upper hand and be Storm's undoing.
Wolverine.
There's not much to say about Wolverine in this issue. He doesn't really have a leading role, but I still felt impacted by his presence. He's extremely there without having to be shoved in my face like he has been for the past several decades. It's a silent, animalistic presence, and I think it serves him well. There's no berserker rage, it's all very calm, but also extremely threatening. He scares the bejesus out of the coroner in the beginning and also threatens poor Leech with nothing but a snick of his claws. He doesn't do a whole lot in this issue, but I still felt like I knew who he was as a character and also the impact that he can have in battle without actually having to see him fight.
Leech.
The Marvel team does an awesome job of setting up the world of the Morlocks from the very first page. It's dank, it's dark, it's lonely and foreboding, it's everything a Morlock is. Even though the Morlocks are the villains of this story, it's hard to not feel sorry for them. Society's outcasts, they have a sympathetic situation that complicates them from being totally detestable. We never really delve into their histories much, but I feel like some of them would have backstories that are so wretched it would be impossible not to feel sorry for them. One of the saddest cases, in my opinion, is Leech. Everything from the way he looks, to the way he talks, to the way he blindly follows Callisto's orders makes my little heart break for him. He's just a kid, and yet here he is living like a Morlock. He's actually a pretty crucial player in this story, his power to negate the powers of others being critical in giving the Morlocks the upper hand. But even from the way he just drops himself down from the ceiling onto Storm, the body language and words used to describe him suggest to me that it's not something he truly believes in. He's simply following orders like a good little henchman, showing up at all the right times, doing all the bad things, and it's the saddest thing in the world.
Masque.
On the other side, a Morlock who is probably the purest of evil is Masque. Now, I love Masque. I think he's got a super cool power, and I love how ruthless he is. He has no problem torturing the pretties and refuses to conform to their standards. He's an interesting case because I think he truly believes in the Morlock cause, though would take it to an extremely lethal place were he in power. Whereas the current Morlock regime is mostly about hiding and surviving, Masque has a bitterness to him that prefers to seek out confrontation. Whatever trauma happened to him must have been pretty bad because his power could literally give any of the Morlocks the looks to be able to live in the world above, yet he doesn't use them that way. Instead, he chooses to deform people even more so that they fit in even less. I mean, maybe it's a Morlock thing, but I do find it interesting that he has the potential to help everyone live a better life than this, but keeps it away from them. I guess that's his thing. He shouldn't have to conform to societal standards in order to fit in. I mean, that's the whole concept behind the X-Men anyway, but Masque seems to take it to a very angry place. In this issue, we begin to see his dissension within the ranks. He is starting to become adversarial to Callisto, questioning her commands and foreshadowing his future mutiny against her. Maybe it's because Callisto isn't really the leader anymore, but I think he sees the cracks within the leadership foundation and is looking to take advantage of them. Masque is thoroughly an opportunist with a bad attitude problem, so even though he may be a stout believer of the Morlock cause and have a powerful ability, these same qualities making him absolute danger to keep around unchecked.
Colossus, Illyana, Nightcrawler.
We finally get a resolution to Colossus's medical mystery in this issue. Rogue proves her trustworthiness to the team and absorbs Colossus's thermal state, giving the Morlock healer a short but sufficient window to cure him of his mortal wounds. It's kind of a convenient and anticlimactic resolution to Peter's plight, but I dig it. After being dragged on for a few issues, it's time for something new. To me, the most intriguing part of this subplot was the interaction of Colossus's teammates while he was frozen. Nightcrawler and Illyana, arguably the teammates closest to Peter, both silently expressed worry for what the other one must be going through over Colossus's potential demise. Nightcrawler, of course, fretting for Illyana because she's his sister. But she's actually taking it all pretty well. This helps paint a picture of Illyana's new status quo. She had killed a version of Colossus and several other X-Men during her 7-year stint in Limbo, so she's not quite the little snowflake that Nightcrawler thinks she is. Illyana is a cold character, although still pretty sweet in these early days, but little instances like this prove just how hardened she had become. It was funny seeing Nightcrawler use a stethoscope to examine Colossus. Nightcrawler is not a physician, and I don't think the X-Men have any medical personnel on staff at the moment, so seeing him use such a basic instrument without knowing what to expect out of it is really funny. Like, I guess I would do the same thing if my friend was stuck in nitrogen. Try to find a heartbeat. We also get to see more of Nightcrawler's personal dimensions in this scene. As a man of faith, he wants to forgive his enemies for their misdeeds against his friend, but as a mutant, and just as a plain old guy with feelings, he is thirsty for revenge. Kurt is at his best when he's navigating these two opposing forces in his life. Both are facets of his personality, and though this issue only hints at them, it's always nice to see that he's more than just a stoic monk or even just an avenging superhero.
Fashion.
This issue was a beautiful story, a classic tale of Beauty and the Beast. Unlucky for us, we weren't gifted any truly beautiful fashion moments, but I still have some opinions on what I saw. The Morlock fashion was fantastic. It's edgy, it's alternative, and it's an FU to convention. Right from the very get-go, when we get a glimpse of those dirty girder belts from Jo and her friend, you know you're in for a unique ride. Jo's bouffant speaks volumes itself. I dare say I've seen some of these Morlock fashion statements at the club most Saturday nights, particularly in the form of this harness and underwear guy. I see what they are going for here, using a counterculture fashion sense to paint these people as rejects, but that's a controversial thing to do. When I was in high school, part of our psychology course blasted Disney for its portrayal of eccentric villains, claiming that it promotes homophobia. Ursula, Jafar, Scar, when compared with their white-red protagonist counterparts, I totally see the argument. I don't think the movies ever intended anything with these patterns, but it certainly is a symptom of systemic diverse voice oppression. I can see how repeated exposure to these portrayals can be developmentally problematic for kids, that kids forge their opinions based a lot on what they consume. So by Marvel dressing the villainous Morlocks by using specific rave-like fashions, it reinforces the negative stereotype that anybody dressed this way must be inherently bad. I don't personally see anything wrong in having the Morlocks dressed in filthy rags. I think it makes sense from a character perspective, but I think it's important to at least have a critical mind about how things are presented in what we consume, especially in things we enjoy. Other than that, I also really liked Kitty's wedding gowns, both the perfect one in her delusion and also the tattered one in real life. Even the sharp high heels she's wearing while she runs through the tunnels have a sort of Cinderella quality to them. I was a big fan of evening gown wrestling matches growing up, so a ripped up dress holds a very special place in my heart. On the practical side of fashion in this issue, the X-Men are wearing some mighty fine jackets when they investigate Kitty's corpse. Even Storm, whose body is impervious to the changing temperatures of the elements, still looks like she's dressed for the weather in a light, puffy jacket. It's simple, but practical, and she looks good wearing it.
Panels.
Here are some of my favorite mini-moments from this issue, followed by my favorite overall panel and my favorite noise. 5. The writers referring to Amanda Sefton as Nightcrawler's lady friend, when really, she's so much more than that, being both his foster sister and girlfriend. 4. Wolverine lighting up a ciggy in the mortuary, totally sure of his analysis that the Kitty corpse is a fake. 3. Rogue absorbing Colossus's trauma and proving her loyalty to the team. 2. Masque changing Kitty's face to help her fit in with her new family. And number 1, Leech leading Kitty back to the wedding after she accepts her fate. My overall favorite panel in this issue is definitely the splash page of Kitty being dressed for the wedding. Even though they are trying to scruff her up a bit in that torn gown, Kitty still looks gorgeous, albeit totally out of it, and like she really doesn't belong next to the grim and gruff Morlocks beside her. It's a really haunting image, and it sets a worrisome tone for the rest of the issue. My favorite noise this issue is a simple but timeless one. It goes to Wolverine's snikt after Leech cancels everyone's power. We don't see anything come from it, but it's enough to know the fear in poor little Leech from this moment, and it reinforces Wolverine's characterization all issue long, a quiet but effective force to be reckoned with.
Ads.
This issue, I'm highlighting the "gotta get a grit" ad, which is apparently a phrase worth repeating. When I first read about this "gotta get a grit" opportunity, I didn't know what the kids were going to be peddling. Magazine subscriptions, I guess? Based on the picture, I take it that Grit is a publication and not some home fries. It's definitely a fail on the informational side, as I just don't know what it's advertising, but the headline is so catchy. Gotta get a grit, gotta get a grit. And what kid wouldn't want to jump at the opportunity to gain practical business experience?
X-Mail.
I always thought it was cute when they would have a character answer the mail letters. Whose job was it to do this? The writer? The editor? The intern? Anyway, I always thought that they did a good job of capturing the character's voice. This issue, they give their newest ex-recruit Rogue a chance at mail call, and it's really endearing to see all those ahs and shugas in her responses. Rogue answering letters is all the more enjoyable because 2 of them actually bash her. Chuck Sotosanti and DJ Otterenith write in to express their displeasure at Rogue joining the team. Actually, I'm putting that lightly. They write in to express their absolute disgust at even the idea of Rogue being allowed to join the team. Luckily for them, Rogue's been more in touch with her softer side lately, and simply answers that she hopes readers will give her the same chance that the X-Men are giving her. Oh, if Chuck and DJ could see her now. Well, that's it for this issue. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you agree or disagree with anything I've said, and come back for more Great X-Mentations.